Hi, everyone. Welcome to Jewish Museum Milwaukee's Museum Moments. I am delighted to have you guys here with me today. And we're going to be exploring salad dressing. It's going to be exciting. It's not something you guys think of as having a big fancy story, but this one I think is a story about community. It's a story about women taking initiative, and it's a story about the power of an idea and the family business. So without further ado, we will launch into our final segment of our Food Week this week, featuring the story of Henri's salad dressing. So, as I was saying, Henri's salad dressing. It was founded by these two ladies right here, Henrietta Mahler and Helen Brachman. And Henrietta and Helen, in 1935, started a business in Henrietta's kitchen. And the idea was they knew a great French salad dressing recipe, and they manufactured it. This was in Shorewood, Wisconsin, just north of the city. And they made it, they bottled it, and they sold it. And their initial push, it is my understanding, is that they were going to make a little extra money to help support their family's philanthropic goals with the Jewish Welfare Fund, which is now the Milwaukee Jewish Federation. That was their goal, that they were going to earn enough. It also is in the middle of the Depression, so there was also this sense that I've read that they needed to help out in the family in this way. Henrietta and Helen are sisters-in-law. Henrietta Mahler is married to Helen Mahler Brachman's brother. And they are, so they take on this idea. Henrietta becomes the kind of cook, and Helen becomes the sales lady. She goes out all over Milwaukee selling this salad dressing, 2 to 3 bottles at a time, to grocery stores. Now remember, in our last installment of Museum Moments, we know that at one time there were 248 Jewish grocers in Milwaukee, and that's just the Jewish grocers. So just think about how much legwork Helen Brachman had to do in order to ensure that she was actually reaching as many people as possible. So she would go on these massive routes and she would sell the salad dressing. And French dressing was really the only dressing they were producing until 1947. So for the first 12 years of Henri's salad dressing, as it became known, Henri for Henrietta Mahler, that was their kind of major thing. The other great story that I learned is that, so for the first 6 months, they were producing this out of Henrietta Mahler's kitchen. And there's a lot of stories that we have, although I can't find any independent corroboration, that they actually would bottle this on their ping pong table, which I think is just such an awesome way of looking at this. Personally, this particular picture I adore because it so reminds me of that kind of Laverne and Shirley influence. And it says something that's so Wisconsin, these two ladies in the assembly line, although they were the bosses, not the bottlers here. So for these, and after 6 months, the Shorewood Health Department said, you can't bottle, things for manufacture in a kitchen. So they moved to a small East Side bottling, like storefront, where they bottled and manufactured their salad dressing. And then later on, they moved to an actual factory assembly line sort of establishment on Silver Spring, west of the city. So 1947, they take on a new recipe. It's called Tasty, and it becomes kind of what their trademark, their hallmark recipe. You can see what it looks like today. You can still buy this on stores. This is what its bottling looks like 50, 60 years ago. I do want to say one more thing about the French dressing. Once from Helen Brachman's granddaughter, I had this amazing story that her grandmother would go to all of these stores and sell in whatever way she could. They were selling on consignment. They were going back and forth. So basically, they were only paid when the dressing sold. And she had a call from one of these local groceries, and they said, hey, we really need some more of that shoe polish. The label had fallen off. It had been restocked, not in the salad dressing aisle, but in the shoe polish aisle. And her response was, great, yeah, I'll get you that shoe polish right away. Took off the label and brought them back some French dressing that clearly someone thought was sort of a red-orange shoe polish. So Tasty becomes the dressing that they're best known for. And it's kind of a sweet and sour style dressing. They have all sorts of ways of expanding. This is, at the same time that they're really a Midwestern regional company. This is a contest they ran in the 1940s where they're saying, just finish the sentence in 25 words or less. I like Henri's dressing because 25 words or less, this is very Twitter appropriate sort of contest. And your first prize would be a Westinghouse roaster. This is also some of that kind of marketing. This is saying, and I think right now, as so many of us are in this universe of trying to feed our families, trying to make sure that we're eating healthy foods, I love this. It says salads are an important part of the diet for any family. For a truly balanced diet, everyone should have some fresh green vegetables every day. For the problem in your family, the salad skippers, Henri has originated an unusual sweet sour dressing called Tasty. The recipe is a well-guarded secret, but men, children, and chronic salad skippers make no secret of their appreciation of this special dressing. So maybe for all you parents out there who are struggling to get your kids to eat something green, maybe you're just missing Tasty salad dressing. So the family continued to be active in this business for many years. And in fact, both Helen and Henrietta's sons took over the business. And this was a fascinating new element that we learned in the past couple of days. In the 1970s, they introduced a new flavor called Yoga Whip. And it was a yogurt-based dressing, and it was designed by actually one of the marketing people. He came in, this guy O'Rourke came in and said, my daughters keep bringing in all this health food, and they're really into yogurt, and I think there's something here. I think we should try and figure out how to bring yogurt into our dressing. So they come up with this whipped dressing that is called Yoga Whip, and they immediately get a cease and desist order from the giant of food manufacturing, Kraft Foods, saying Yoga Whip is too close to our Miracle Whip. You can't have something called whip in the title. They actually claim that they own the title whip. This leads Henri's salad dressing into a 7-year legal battle. One of their attorneys goes through 1.5 million documents during the disclosure period. 1.5 million documents. And it takes over $1.2 million for a federal judge to finally say, hey, you don't own the word whip. Whip is a process of how things are made. There's no way to trademark that. You can't take this. And the reason that they claimed this is they said that Miracle Whip, their product, is the one that owns that. Miracle Whip, by the way, in this time period, had 70% of the market share on mayonnaises. So, I mean, it's not like this was like some sort of, time in which the mayonnaise industry was under decline or in decline or anything like that, or Miracle Whip was under attack. This was just how Kraft worked. And Robert Brachman, who is Helen Brachman's son, who was the president at that time, really saw this as an existential threat. If we don't take Kraft to task here, then we're never going to be able to stand up again. And so they go through this incredibly long, expensive legal process, and it ends up just kind of being like a moral victory. Yep, we can use the name Yoga Whip, but we're at this point kind of been blighted by this. They continue to have better profits and returns, but it is this kind of, it's a big challenge that they never really get back to kind of the family institution that they were before this big case. In 1993, they sell, and since then they've sold again. This is what, if you look at Henri's salad dressing today, this is what you find. That it's owned by a big corporate conglomerate, B&G Foods. But it still says front and center on the top of this big corporate brand. They say in 1935, Henrietta Mahler started her own business by making batches of her delicious homemade salad dressing right in her kitchen. Using her signature recipes, she created the tasty line of sweet, tangy sweet dressings that made her famous. Now Henri's is bringing you the same home style flavor Henrietta did more than 80 years ago. So they're still taking that authenticity from her story, making sure that people have this sense of her story in the branding today. So I always think there's a lesson to be learned here. I love the fact that there's a big turn in the 20th century as you look at how people relate to their food. And Henrietta and Helen were really at the forefront of that, you know, thinking about how do we take something that we make, something that we enjoy, and how do we make it accessible to the world? And I think that, you know, they figured out at the very perfect time to go into the food business, to create a business that started as a very small local city entity, then a regional entity, and now has a national reach. And so I salute them. I salute their entrepreneurial spirit. And I hope you guys have enjoyed this edition of Museum Moments. Next week, we're going to have a shorter week because of the holiday of Shavuot. So on Tuesday, we'll be looking at veterans. On Thursday, we'll be talking about Shavuot itself. I might have some special guests on hand for that. And if you've enjoyed this or any of our museum moments, please feel free to make a donation at jewishmuseummilwaukee.org. Thanks very much, and Shabbat Shalom.